Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
All right. And hi to everybody from Dallas. Good seeing you all yesterday. We'll wait a minute to get started. While we're waiting, I just want to put a statement out there and just get your opinion on it. So the average age for homeownership is trending towards 40. What's your thoughts on that, everybody?
Affordability is changing.
Is that acceptable? Like for people to have to wait till they're 40? For
No,
you,
it's not.
Jason, for you as an
Absolutely
agent?
not.
No,
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, I
Bought a
bought
house
my
at,
first house when I was 20, so
yeah, 2027. Yeah.
I was
Gosh.
22.
And look at, it's not that long ago. And I think again, I'm going to be bold here and say like we have an economic opportunity, but more so than that, we have a moral obligation to fix the housing industry. And if first time buyers get into the market, we can change lives for a positive way and we can help fix the market. Can I get an oh yeah for that? I mean, isn't that something that we really need to focus on? We're just sitting here like we're sitting here like victims, saying, "Oh, geez, Mr. Garver, isn't that so sad that it's the average age is 40?" Like we're not doing anything about it. And I think we need to have a call to action and we need to create excitement. And it's not some lame sales pitch to get people to buy because I don't know. There's that 48-2 rule that I talked about, where it says 48% of what happens to us is a direct response to the actions or inactions, the mindsets and beliefs that we have. And 2% is outside of our control, acts of God. That might be a flood, things that we have no control over. But we have so much more control than we lead ourselves to believe in the outcome of process. Okay.
And
Because like,
Rob, there's also the whole mindset of a first-time home buyer can be your client for life,
yeah,
leading to many transactions, based on our ability to treat them the right way and help them to reach their goals.
sometimes, Robert, it could be a little bit frustrating when they don't know anything, but can it also be more rewarding when you help somebody for the first time?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And they will never forget the person that went out of their way to help them the first time.
You're right.
And I feel like as an industry, we've gotten to be complacent. We read the statistics and we say, oh man, isn't that a shame, Bill Sheehy, that the average homeowner is now 40? I got to wait before I can make some sales. I'm like, no, that's not the point. The point is like we are the lighter fluid, we're the ignition, we're the starting point to the whole process, right? And for those of you who've been in the business for 10 years or more, you know that the first time buyer is what starts the whole process, right? Somebody buys a house, somebody else trades up, and then the whole process starts to become more robust. That's how we get to 5 million units, okay? And it's not about, me sitting down and going, hey, Miguel, you can make an extra, 30,000 if you focus on this particular income source. Yes, you will make more money, but you're gonna change a lot of people's lives in a positive way, right? You're gonna have a major impact. And to Mr. Garver's point, there'll be clients for your career, right? And if you're that unique person, they're gonna they're going to refer you to other people that you can have an impact on. And I have a belief that if people were educated and they understood all their options, that a lot of people would not be sitting on the sidelines right now. And I believe a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines right now because we lost control of the process. And why do you think we lost control of the process? Anybody?
Because of COVID,
Lazy.
the
We
shutdown.
we got hung up on the interest rates.
We got lazy.
Anything else?
I think the majority of the industry is paying attention to the politics and the legalities that are coming out of the industry instead of just focusing on their business.
I mean,
Things got too easy.
Bobby Golden and Jason, would you agree with this statement that we've allowed maybe TikTok videos, Instagram, social media, and the traditional media to control the narrative for our damn clients? Would you agree that that's happening? And then we have to try to undo it, and
I
sometimes it's hard.
I agree with that statement when it's not a realtor putting out that information on those platforms. When we allow TikTok and just your social media blast to say, here's what real estate's really like, and it's coming from somebody who's selling Sunset that's probably sold one house a year and made, $600,000. Um, so yes, I mostly agree with that statement, as long if it's not realtors putting it out the info.
Right, but Jason, absent us going out of our way, right? And I think that we probably have been trained to not be pushy, right? We're waiting for people to come to us and say, "Hey, you're thinking of buying our first house." And we do what they say. We might show them houses, but we don't really get to the motivation behind it. Like we don't do a great job at selling the concept of home ownership. We focus on selling homes, right? But to buy a home, you first have to be completely bought into home ownership. And, I don't know, who said they bought a house at 20? Was that you, Jason?
I was one of the ones who said it, yeah.
Right, but weren't you a little bit nervous and didn't you feel like you were stretching at 20 when you bought your first house? Because I think everybody feels like they've been stretching when you buy your first house.
I'm not the best person to ask that question to. I was deployed in the military. We had pulled into Hawaii. I called my dad on a random day after a night of drinking and said, "You know what I want to do when I get home? I want to buy a house." It was the calmest conversation my dad said we'd ever had, but I knew. I was like, I want my own place. I want my own. I'm gonna do it when I get home, and I did it. I'm not the person to ask that question to. It wasn't. None of it was nerve-wracking. I learned a lot about bad realtors because I had one. And I still tell that story today. But it wasn't nerve-wracking for me because I had made the decision. But what you just said, it was about home ownership. So the one thing I would say is I think the top 1 or 2% of realtors sell the idea of home ownership. If we're not selling the idea of home ownership, then we're not, achieving growth in our business. We're going back to, hey, I just need to make a sale. And so I agree with you there. I'm the bad person to ask that question to.
And Kathy Marin, you know, with all the things that are happening with our associations, like we're so worried about CYA that we've lost focus on some of the fundamentals that the industry used to hold near and dear, right? Which is, the dream of homeownership. Now we're worried about, who's going to be coming after us next.
Well, I think that New Jersey Realtors just recently started the Home Initiative. We have a presidential advisory group, and we're looking to find ways to help our legislature as well as make people aware of the affordability and the issues that we're having with middle income earners. It's not just affordable homes, it is home affordability. So we're working on several different fronts to get this done.
And I love you, but if we're waiting for the government to help, we're in deep trouble,
Well, we're just not waiting. We're doing a lot of different things. So,
right? So I'm waiting for somebody to knock and say, Jason, I'm here to help from the government. Uh-oh. So,
well,
so,
if you
so
see that I'm here to help from the government, I would say shut your door and hide.
The
and,
nine, the nine most dangerous words in the English language. Hi, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help.
so Kathy, no, and I appreciate that it's not completely lost in the focus and that the political wrangling that happens behind the scenes. But I do think that our industry has been distracted by a lot of the
Definitely.
changes, right?
In the
And
past 3 years since the lawsuits, definitely.
right, and I'm going on record here to however many of us are on this call to say that we have a moral obligation to have these conversations, not about do you want a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, but talking about what home ownership means, because I'm damn tired of letting other people control our narrative. Okay. And this is the way that we can do our civic duty, whether you're, you know, red or blue, it doesn't matter what affiliation you have. This is something that affects everybody. Okay. Everybody, this is like the American dream. And I feel like a lot of times immigrants value it more than citizens. Okay, people come here. This is the American dream. They will do almost anything to find a way to have that American dream when they migrate here. Yet children of citizens are very complacent. What are some of the reasons why, our younger home buyers, our younger potential home buyers believe that they can't buy a house? Just either type it or I'd prefer if you just want to, shout it out.
Affordability.
Down payment, interest rates,
Hold on.
property taxes,
Location,
Taxes.
quality of schools.
utilities,
Parents.
They don't want to,
what's available in their price range that they can afford.
I think they don't want to change their lifestyles and the spending habits they have, going out to dinner every night. They don't want to make any kind of a change in their life. And sometimes when you buy a home, you have to give up some of the extras. And a lot of them don't want to do that.
Right, but it's really, Ivy, it's really a temporary sacrifice for a long-term gain,
Yes, that's right.
right?
I was
Right?
gonna piggyback on Ivy. I was in the same mindset. Really, I think it's just a lot of the younger generation right now is just thinking that they can do exactly what their parents did with the older prices. And usually when I'm sitting down with my first time home buyers, I would just kind of highlight, what sacrifice can we make now in order to go ahead and make this dream come true with it, whether it's in the next 6, 9 months from now.
Well, I
So,
think it's also important to let them know that 5 to 7 years from now, wherever they start, they can move up. They're not just pigeonholed to that one place that they buy as their first home.
Yes.
okay. So, there are a lot of um, ill-conceived beliefs on why they should be buying now. I think that there's one pervasive belief, which is interest rates are going to fall, so I'm going to wait. I think that's in people's minds. I think that's a really dangerous motivation or lack of motivation. And I think that, if we are not having these conversations, then who's controlling the story? It's the media, it's their common sense, right? But what's the conversation that we have with somebody who's a little bit tentative because of interest rates? We've talked about this a few times on this call.
Prices go up when interest rates go down.
So here's something that honestly works. It's like magic because and Ivy, you're correct. But I think that the way to go about it is, Ivy, if I had a two-headed coin and I flipped it, what would you call every time to win? What would you call it? Heads, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And buying a house now is like it's the fix is in. You flip the coin, and if rates go up and you got a 6% interest rate, Ivy, how would you feel if rates went to 8 and you locked in a 6% 30-year fixed?
And probably great.
You would feel amazing, okay? And then, Ivy, if you bought right now and rates went down to 4.5, how would you feel?
I probably would feel like I made a mistake and I should have waited.
You know what? It's interesting. A lot of people say that, but you know what? You know what will happen if rates drop below in the 5% or below range, Ivy?
You can
It's a
refinance.
competition.
Well,
Competition.
hold on. Yes, if rates drop into the 5% range, Ivy, do you think there will be more or less competition to buy the homes on the market?
Probably more.
Probably more. And if there's more competition, you think you'll be able to secure the house that you want, or you may have to settle?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, history has shown us that when there's excessive competition, that homeowners had settled for whatever they could get instead of picking what they wanted. So right now, the inventory is appropriate. In many markets, it's abundant. And if you were to buy now and rates dropped, you could refinance and take advantage of the lower purchase price and the more inventory. But a very logical person would say, I'm waiting for interest rates to drop without us having this conversation with them. Okay. And I think everybody should write down the two-headed coin story because it's so fundamental, right? You win either way.
No.
But if we're not having that conversation, nobody is, right? And some of us didn't mention here, the student loan or student debt fiasco, right? Okay. Yes, there is there is a lot of buyers do have student debt, and that is an issue. Okay, but it's not a insurmountable issue. Okay, and because it's an issue, that's why we need to have our partnerships with our lenders. And I don't mean we need to be an investor in it, but we need to have a common goal. Okay, we need to have lenders that are not just looking to just take the easy ones, right? Because you can find a way to structure transactions to help people buy a house. And sometimes those first time home buyers are like the most magical experiences for us, right? Because they're the most appreciative people. You see the way that they light up. You take a picture with them with their key. It's just like, it's amazing, right? It's like starting a new, it's like starting a new chapter to their life, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so if not us, then who? All of these things can be overcome. I started out as a lender, and sometimes it's magical what will happen if you just ask a question, right? So, you know, I might say to somebody, hey, you know what? In order to buy that $450,000 house based upon the income and the debt you have, unfortunately, we need to get your savings up to 20% down payment or greater. Do you have a 401k or any way to have access to any additional funds, right? And people would come back a week and a half later after having Thanksgiving and say, you know what? My parents, um, my parents decided that they were going to give me some of our inheritance early so that we could buy a house. They were going to give us a legitimate gift, right? Because that next generation is sitting on a lot of wealth, right? Because their homes have appreciated tremendously, right? And Glenn, you're gonna have to talk about the cow, okay, before we wrap this up. But sometimes just asking a simple question, if somebody has the motivation, right? If you go through and you sell them on home ownership, they will find a way, right? They will find a way. Whether it's taking a second job, whether it's, doing different things, maybe there's a spouse that's, was home to raise the kids and takes a new job, and they can take a job and get a full-time employment. I don't, is anybody from the Gopi team on this call now? Because I want to just share an experience that I had where, it was, um, maybe it was in the spring or the fall. I think it might have even been the fall of last year when, Michael Gopi had relatives coming in from, out of state, and he was doing a seminar. So they, hey, come by the seminar, and then afterwards we'll go out for a late dinner. So, this gentleman just retired from the military, and his wife just graduated from college and got her first job. Now, they had no idea that they could qualify for buying a house. They went through the event. They were just waiting for the Michael to be done with the home buyer event, and they left there fired up and bought a house because she thought that because she just got her job that she couldn't qualify. She thought she needed to be on the job for 2 years. But are there any lenders on the call here? Anybody that's
Yes, sir.
skilled lender? So if you graduate college and you get a full-time job, how many years do you need to be on that job to qualify to use that income?
You could immediately use the transcripts to fill in that requirement right there.
There was a false belief, and then the other gentleman, retired. He was 4 years in the military. He just got out and he got a job here, but he didn't have 2 years. Now, Caesar, if you're in the military and you transition out of the military into civil employment, how many years do you have to work on your new job if it's full time?
So there really isn't a requirement, especially with the VA. They're pretty lenient. But as long as it's pretty much in the same line of work, you could use the prior history of your basically using your military resume to qualify for the loan. And not to like jump around, but same thing with the student loans. I mean, depending on the loan program, it could be as simple as either 0.5% or 1% to be hit you on the obligations, but we can easily waive that away as well if they can get on an income-based repayment plan. So there is always a way. It's not a one size fits all when it comes down to loans. It's just taking that specific scenario and seeing how we can, make home ownership a possibility.
Even now we're coming towards the end of the year. If you have some of the gig workers or self-employed people, now's a great time to have a discussion about, hey, maybe you don't write everything off and you file your tax return strategically so that you can buy a house. Right? Because I think, Caesar, I think one of the biggest mistakes home buyers make is they wait to talk to their lender until they're ready to buy a house, but they don't plan in advance.
Exactly. My recommendation is always 3 to 6 months prior to your purchasing. You should be sitting down with the lender to get your, ducks in a row. Because even if you don't qualify, that lender should, or your referral partner should be good enough to at least put them on an action plan to be able to purchase when they're ready. And it's just, again, specifically taking their scenario, seeing what they're working with, reviewing the credit, the assets, and putting them on that plan.
And how about the most overlooked cosigner opportunity, right?
Correct.
I mean, you could always have a parent be a guarantor cosigner on a loan. Okay, there are different requirements based upon down payments and loan programs, but there's abundant opportunities. It's like I believe if somebody, has employment, can afford it, generally pays their bills, don't need to have perfect credit, um, that we should be able to help them navigate through buying their first house and changing their life.
What about the person who has a student loan that hasn't paid? It was frozen and hasn't paid anything on it these past years. What do you do with them? She's scared to death of that.
Well, when does the student? I guess it would depend on when the student loan now comes due and what the monthly payment is, and most importantly, Vicky, we want to make sure that we don't put them in harm's way financially, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, but you know what? I'm just going to share an experience. One of our affiliates. This is an interesting story, but his son went away to college. They wouldn't allow him to have a car for the first year, so dad gave him Uber Eats, right? He gave him an account, credit card, everything, right? Second year, he decides he's gonna give him a vehicle, okay? And now the kid was so damn lazy that he kept ordering everything on Uber Eats. So look, you need to have some financial discipline, right? Like, if you want to buy a house, you can't have everything. And if you want to have everything, you might not be able to afford a house. And why do you choose that, Vicky? Because you're not sold on the merits of home ownership, right? You're letting somebody else control that narrative. Okay? And I'm not saying it's right for everybody, but I'm saying we should have a conversation with everybody that's not a pathetic sales pitch, that has integrity, that gives them, the pluses and minuses. Right? I hope we all had, mentors and role models in our life, right? Whether they were um, like socially people that we respected, intellectually, business wise, even parents, friends. Like, here's the wake up call, to be a leader, right? To be an educator and to help people decide what's right for them. Don't let somebody else make that call for them. This is not just a financial interest. It's like a moral obligation that you have. If you're in a position where somebody would say that Kenya's my realtor, then damn it, you have an obligation to have that conversation with them before they ask you, Kenya. It's not up to us to wait, right? We should be, hey, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And the worst place to get your real estate education is on social media. It truly is. Or let somebody like we should be giving them that opportunity and that path. And I am just so disturbed that the average age of homeownership is 40 years old. And, it doesn't need to be. It really doesn't need to be. Okay, there's ways that we can help people that have the motivation, but I just think everybody feels like they're a victim. Oh, Gary Greenacre, I have student loans. I'd love to buy a house, but it's not really possible. It's really rough because they didn't waive all my student loans, Gary. I got to wait until I'm 40. I mean, come on, you're putting your life on hold, right?
Exactly. Yep. Need to talk to a lender.
And we need to talk to you too, Gary.
Yep.
Because before they're going to get aggressive with the lender, they need to know what home ownership means, right?
Yep.
And give an example. I don't know when you bought your first house, Gary, but I'm assuming that it was probably a pretty good investment and that you're a big fan of it. And if you're
Oh,
not,
yeah.
if you're not, you can tell a white lie here for this part. But
Yeah,
anyway,
no. 25 in the first house.
so you bought your first house 25.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if Chief Baker somewhere where he can speak, Mr. Baker, but you had something that had an impact on me, and it was parallel to Warren Buffett. Are you able to speak, or do I need to try to?
I'm with you.
So what is the conversation look like when you're talking to some of these people that are willing to wait?
Well, one is stop the clock, right? You
Stop.
have to stop the clock. And then the second of recent, I'm really starting to use like, what is waiting actually costing you? That's my big one now.
Right.
There's a cost associated with it.
Right. And I don't know who came up with this, but they call it the cow, the cost of waiting.
Yep.
Okay. And there is a really real and significant cost of waiting if you want to become a homeowner, right?
Yep.
And I think that you need to do some things that you think are intuitive, and you need to say, hey, Glenn, we get you your first house. We do a FHA. You're putting 3.5% down on a 450 house. Historically, these houses go up about 5.2% per year. Not every year, but over a 10-year period, there's never been a period where it's not been, greater than 3.8 or up to as high as 8%. If it goes up 5.2%, how much of that do you keep with your 3.5% down payment? Now, you might think that that's a really stupid question, but it makes them recognize that, right? And then
Yeah.
and then you can use the language of, hey, can you check on your phone what's the net worth of a homeowner versus a renter? Right? Because if I tell you, it doesn't have the same meaning, because we talked about last week about the 10-10-0. If you have that on a nice pretty handout and you give it to them, they're not going to remember it unless they write it. And when you ask them to look it up, does anybody ever ask their home buyers to look it up without telling them? Does anybody do that? If you don't, start to do it now, because you'll get, Glenn, holy, it's 40 times, they're 40 times wealthier than renters. Like, you get that reaction. But if you tell Glenn, if you tell them that they're 40 times, they might think they're 40% wealthier. Like, they need to see it.
Yep.
And they need to have the discovery on their own.
Yeah. And Rob, our job is to bring them. Well, obviously, you have to connect, create the problem, like state it. But more importantly, there has to be a consequence for it. But you can't tell them there's a consequence. You have to let them answer their own question so that they know that the consequence exists, right? And the consequence is the fear of missing out on whatever it is, lifestyle, money, whatever it may be.
Yep. And I'm gonna relate this to the oracle of investing, Warren Buffett, who says only a fool tries to time the market. Look it up. That's one of his famous quotes. And another quote that he has is, time in the market always beats timing the market. Time in the market beats timing the market. If we're not using this language with our prospective buyers, the youth that we have access to, right? Even if they're not asking us, say, hey, you know what? Glenn, I just wanted to, introduce you and your wife to what this would look like when you're ready to buy. I want you to have that information at your fingertips. And then that might strike interest in doing something sooner. And that is the cure to the $4 million annual 4 million units sold, which is a real estate recession, borderline depression, because, our population is increasing and, our home transactions is flat to decreasing. It's down from, I think, as a 6.2 or 6.3 million units at its peak and a normalized number of around 5 million. Okay, so there's 20% less people, buying and selling homes. And my contention is most of that is the first-time home buyer not entering the market and starting the process of people moving up.
Hi, Rob. Can I share something with the group?
Absolutely, Karma.
Okay, so I'm working right now with two first home buyer. And number one, I told them you don't have to pay 20% down payment to get a home. Call here, Frank, he will tell you how much you need for a down payment, number one. And number two, I said, for a buyer, he want to wait. I said, now, which is, I believe that in the market in November and December is the best time for a buyer because you don't have too many people to compete with you. And if you're waiting for the interest rate, how low will be? 20, 0.5%, quarter percent. This is number for the buyers. For the seller, I really like the idea, which is what the cost of waiting. And I use this one for a homeowner. And he said, Karma, I can wait. I have no problem. I said, you know what? You made a big mistake. Waiting are going to cost you money.
Right. And Karma, I
Sure.
would just encourage everybody. And Karma is an amazing agent with tremendous communication. As a matter of fact, you might be like associated with me longer than anybody else because I think, when I had my first office 31 years ago, you were there. But we, in my opinion, Karma, should be, instead of telling them the cost of waiting is severe, we should be asking them questions so that they discover that. Okay. And I'm as guilty as everybody else in trying to educate them. But when you ask questions and they discover, just like when they look up the net worth of a renter versus a homeowner, they'll see that significance. You could ask them like, hey, let's just say we get together in 5 years. Can you believe that would be 2030? And 5 years from now, 2030, if you wait, what would your equity look like if you wait? And what would it look like if you bought a house? Let's just have that conversation.
No, what I meant for the seller that he said, Karma, I have his house in the market. He said, I can wait. It doesn't matter. I said, I think, and which is, I believe that waiting are going to cost you money and you will feel sorry if you wait. But that's what I believe.
Are you talking about if they're unmotivated and they're waiting for a perfect buyer?
Exactly. But thank God we have an offer in the house. He already signed the offer. So we are ready for closing.
Well, I love those conversations, Karma, and it's never in their best. Like when you build up days in the market, it's devastating.
Yeah.
But look at, does anybody do direct mailing? Right?
I do.
How much do you spend a month on direct mail? Anybody?
Probably 1,800-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. What would happen if you cut that down to 1,500 and when you have the three people that buy a house every month, Jason, you said, look, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a dinner catered after you move in, and why don't you invite three of your friends over and we can celebrate your new home, right? If these are first-time home buyers, chances are they're going to bring people over that aren't home buyers, and you can kind of be that figure that help them get to that new status in their life, that new benchmark, right? It does require a little bit more effort, right? But think about the reach and the influence that you could have by doing something as simple as that.
Hey, Rob, that's a great suggestion. Are you suggesting at their home or at your house?
No, they're home.
They're home.
Oh,
Yeah,
once they've moved in.
Right. And Mickey, I would say to first-time home buyers, and a lot of them are getting older and older now, but whoever your first-time home buyers, say, hey, Mickey, and I know you enjoy your customers, so this would be authentic from you, and most of us are in this boat. I'm so proud that we're able to get this home that checks the boxes for you, and I'd like to do a little celebration dinner with 3 or 4 of your closest friends. Let's have them over, right? Or you might even be more comfortable saying, "Hey, do you know any people that haven't yet crossed the line to home ownership that are friends of yours? Maybe you can invite them over and share what the experience looks like, so they might not be so afraid."
How about even, I'm just thinking out loud, how about even a housewarming party since, housewarming is very much about, routine and saying, suggest bring your friends and it'll be on me.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially what it is. You're just better defining it than me, Mickey. But nobody's doing this, right? Nobody. What we do is we send them a freaking cutting board with our name on it, which they don't really even want.
I sent him a robot to clean the floors.
All right. Well,
I give him a custom wine box with a wine bottle from my hometown or my home state, and I can tell him a story about it.
okay. Is
Actually,
there?
Rob, I'll double down on something you just said. I'm not going to decrease my ad spend from 18 to 1500. I'm going to double down on that. I'm going to increase it to 2000. I'm still going to throw the party because each thing you do is what you're investing in your business, and it invests in more and more potential leads and clients.
Right, you'll get that incremental return. And
Yes.
and look at I'm not an anti Zillow person, okay? Because I'm not. But I'm saying like if you're spending, $300, 500, $200 a lead on Zillow, I would invest in people that actually want to hear from us, right? You have that dinner, you see people that you know, you could have a better impact, right? Because the Zillow is like blood money, right? And it's a tough sport. It requires, ferocious follow-up. And, again, I'm not against it, but I'm saying like there's so many other alternatives to have impact. Okay. So Mickey and Jason, welcome to your new marketing plan. You have to keep us posted on how that goes. Um,
I guess I'm throwing a party. Huh.
Me too.
but it just makes sense, and nobody, we don't do it because nobody else has been doing it, you know? Um,
Rob, I think one thing that just to note, like the things that you've said, obviously all of your positioning was questions, not pontification. And every listing that I've won competitively, the agents come in and told them what to do rather than had them come to the conclusion on your own. And you did that through your whole entire initial part of asking questions. And even down to the close on this, you don't say, well, now are you ready to buy a house? You say, does locking in now feel like a smarter move? Like you're still, you ask the question and keep asking questions. Don't tell them because that's how you lose.
yeah, I mean, Glenn, I think a lot of it is fundamental common sense, and it's also, um, when you give a shit, people can tell, right?
Yeah.
When you are genuinely trying to help them and you're not commission breathing them, it makes a difference. And I don't know how else I can explain it, but it really does have a difference. Just had a couple of notes. I'm just trying to get my fingers on it here. Let's see. All right, I'm not going to waste time looking at it. But instead of looking at it from a purely, business perspective, is about making it into a human perspective. And I know that this is a reach for a lot of you, but I genuinely mean that if somebody was to be asked, who would you go to if you're looking to buy a house, and your name is one of the three that they would mention, then I'm telling you, you have a moral obligation to get in front of this. Okay, not an economic. You have a moral obligation to make sure everybody is at least aware of this opportunity, right? And this can be things from, parents with their kids in college, making them aware that they can do a kiddie condo, right? There are a lot of people with tremendous gains in the stock market, right? That maybe are feeling a little nervous, like, hey, this can't continue to go on forever. Everything that goes up does come down. Maybe you want to diversify into real estate, right? Because people diversify stocks and bonds. They buy growth stocks, they buy income stocks, right? That's diversification. But who's advocating for real estate? Nobody. Nobody, because they're not making any money off of it. There's no incentive for their financial planner because they can't get a commission on it. So if it's not you, then who? Right? we have a financial incentive, but beyond that, we have a moral obligation to have that conversation with as many people as can benefit from that. Okay. So if you want to be lazy or complacent with where your business is, but you love your clients like I do, then you're gonna have those conversations, all the time, right? Because, imagine, Mickey, if, you told three, couples this story and you skip two, right? And they get together somewhere like, oh, Mickey, how come you never shared that with me, the cost of waiting? How come I never heard that from you? Right? Because we feel like we're bothering them or we're getting in the way. Hey, you know what, Kathy? I just want to make sure that I made this available to you in the event that you wanted to know. And if you're not going to buy for 10 years, a lot of my clients or a lot of my sphere, they want to at least know this information so they can plan in advance. Because did you ever have somebody that says they're going to sell in 6 months to a year, and you call them in 4 months and they've already sold it to a neighbor? They never know what's really happening. That may be their best guess. But if they say they're going to be selling in 6 months, I'd be calling them every month, seeing how I could help, right? You want to talk about, preparing it, right? And if you're thinking about buying, geez, if you're thinking about buying when your lease is up in August of next year, now is the time to start preparing, not in June. In June, everything becomes chaotic, right? And we've all seen that happen. Doesn't need to be. Is Robert Garver? Robert, you still here or you dropped off? Oh, there you are. I'm trying to find this quote here, but where is this? You're gonna love this one because it's right up your alley. If I can find it.
Well, while
Look
you were
good.
looking for that, I was going to mention that, one of the things that I used to do was since I sold a lot of houses in the town where I live, anytime I sold a new one to new people coming into the town, I would have a cocktail party at my house to take the freshly moving pressure off of them, and I'd invite other clients of mine that I had sold houses to in the town so that they could all talk to the new people and get to know them and point out things to them about the town, in addition to telling them what a wonderful job I had done in the past for all of them, which would reconfirm in their minds, what a great job I had done for the new people.
All right, here's the quote that has your name on it, Robert.
Okay.
Look good, play good, get paid good.
Yeah, yeah.
Look good, play good, get paid good. I love that one. And then here for especially the new agents, but this wouldn't hurt for everybody. Knowledge is competence, competence is trust, and trust is a sale. Knowledge is competence, competence is trust, and trust is a sale.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of a listing conversation.
Yep. So, when I was in, we had Ivy, about 12 people yesterday for a little round table, kind of a little last minute. I had a layover coming back from the broker summit, and Ivy put together this great meeting, and it was so collaborative, and nobody left early, which was a great sign, right, Ivy?
Went on till after 2 o'clock.
And they even asked for kind of my notes from the session, which was really, pretty cool. And I saw a lot of positive feedback. And I don't know, most of the attendees there, 20 years or more experience, and everybody was taking notes. And it was because the business has changed, right? Vicky, you were there. How was that?
No, Pam was there. Vicky wasn't
Oh,
there,
Vicky wasn't there?
but
Oh,
Pam
Pam.
was there. Yeah. Pam is on the call with us.
I'm on the call.
Yeah.
Okay. So Pam, do you take a lot of notes?
every time on these master classes I did not take notes yesterday, but you did give us our sheet.
And you
So
printed
I've
it
been
up.
looking back and reviewing through that. It was a good class, and it's for the old timers. You know, we get stuck in the mud, I think, sometimes on how things were done 20 years ago. It's good to have, and I said this to you yesterday, a refresh on our approach on how we verbalize to people.
Yeah, and it also gives us new excitement when we're playing when we have a new playbook, right?
And I think millennials have been a new and challenging prospect for us agents that have been in the business a long time.
Yeah. Well, being that it requires more than just artificial intelligence to sell a house. I'm not saying that we don't embrace AI, but AI won't take you the final tenth of a mile in the process, right? Because they want somebody that they trust, right? And Glenn, unfortunately, I don't think AI is there for that personal trust that takes you for that last mile, that last tenth of the mile in the process, right?
No,
You're
but I no, but I what I would say is though, it can help folks who keep repeating the same thing to think differently about what they'll say and potentially using other sources. Because if you're doing the same routine that you were 30 years ago for the sales pitch now, it's a different pitch, right? So if you can use AI to challenge that so that you think differently and then put it in your own heart and words, man, you are invincible.
Yep. And what what I'm learning as I go through this journey, and here's something that is a real, epiphany to me. And I know there are a lot of people that are willing to help, and there are people in different camps. There are people like, all right, if somebody asks me, I'll kind of give them an answer. There are people that kind of get annoyed by people asking for help. And then there are people like Glenn who's like always volunteering. Hey, Rob, can I do this training? Because I think it could help a lot of people, right? And I was just like, well, Glenn's such a nice guy. I really appreciate that. But if you really dig down, Glenn might not even think about this. But when you teach it, Glenn, you actually master the material better, right? So when you teach somebody, you're talking about the finer points, and then it actually is a big gift for you. So
It is.
you might think that that's really, outlandish and out there, but I am telling you, when I try to come up with material and try to find ways to help, I think it just makes me, a better resource for you when I go to try to teach you. Because when I teach you, it has to be second nature to me. I can't be like, well, I kind of just wing it naturally and it works, right? When you're teaching, you need to be deliberate, intentional, strategic on how you talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So,
And it sure beats practicing in a mirror, Rob.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Because you get to see how somebody responds to it. Do they get it or do they not get it, right? And then you can give
Yeah.
it a different approach on how you get to that point.
Yeah.
Brian in Arizona.
Yes, sir.
So, you're extremely successful, a lot of years experience. Like, is this helpful for you? Or are you going to change the approach a little bit? Like, I'm always amazed at some of the people with tremendous resumes that participate in our conversations here.
Yeah, I think I see a couple changes here. Yes, like to take lots of notes. If I don't know if you can see that or not, kind of blurs out. But anyway, got a whole page of notes, and yeah, and I think that thing that Pam said about getting stuck in the mud, I can see the realities of that. We get stuck in these, hey, this is how we've always done it. This is how we've always done it. And man, the speed of this business now is you can't even do stuff you did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It's so different now. But yeah, I think I'm going to have more be very focused on my intentional conversations, especially with the buyer community.
And Brian, something that you just said kind of struck a thought in me, which is when you get yourself out of the mud, right, you become more engaged and excited. And if you're engaged and excited, what do you think the client's going to feel? Are they going to feel that energy?
Absolutely. Energy is contagious. And people don't want to be around the mopey humdrum, oh, woe be me, type realtor. They want the guy who's out in the action, who's got the energy, who's focused, who's moving forward, because energy is addicting.
Yep. So there's something, you're gonna maybe take a look at it and find a way to be a little bit more exciting, a little bit more dynamic when you do that same process over and over and over again, because it does get monotonous, right? Saying the same thing over and over again, but you have to remember it's new for your prospect, right? So you have to be, on point every single time, right?
Yeah, and even if you're on the phone, that old adage of people can tell you're smiling over the phone. There's so much truth in that.
Yeah. Um, and how about this one? This one was something I heard on my extended delay getting back from Dallas. Uh, Knowledge is competence. Competence is trust, and trust is a sale. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily mean a sale, an immediate sale of a listing or a buyer, but it means that people are bought on you, right? Knowledge is competence. Competence is trust. Trust is a sale, right? When they know that you know what you're doing and you have that competence and the confidence, then that logical progression is, a selection or a sale to work with us. Okay. And I am increasingly seeing, as I have the privilege of working with this amazing group, and you invite me out to a listing appointment or even a buyer appointment, that once you run the play, right? Once you don't cut corners, you have the full conversation. What happens is the fee is never an issue. The fee is never, like, if you build such a tremendous amount of trust, and then you say, hey, here's the next step. Our fee is 2.5, 3, 3.5, whatever it is, right? We need to decide when. It just goes like that. It's not like, hey, wait a second, Jason, I want to talk to you about that fee. It almost never happens. And you're going to say I'm crazy, but invite me out. Invite me to come on an appointment with you. Okay. And I prefer it to be one that you're a little bit skeptical, somebody who's motivated, but skeptical that they're going to work with you. Okay. I can't tell you how many times it's like, hey, Ivy, we're going to be interviewing 4 people. Do you want to go first or last? Guess where Rob always wants to go?
First, yeah.
First, because there is no second.
Absolutely.
I,
Couldn't they?
I'm not arrogant about it, but why would they? Jason? Why would they take a second appointment if I've addressed everything that they need, and there's competence, is confidence, there's trust, and then it's just like they'd be disappointed if we didn't finalize the paperwork or whatever you want to call committing to work together, right?
Oh, I agree. Completely agree.
So
You also got to realize sometimes that's a test question. If you always say, well, I'll go last, I'll wait till the end of the week. Sometimes they just want to know that you have confidence in the ability. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter where I go because I know I'm good at what I do, but why don't we schedule it for your first appointment and we'll see where it goes from there. And by the time I do that, they didn't have other appointments, or 8 out of 9 of them, they're going to sign or call me back if they do book 2 or 3 others.
Yeah, and Jason, a lot of buyers and sellers have false beliefs on how the process should work, right?
Mhm.
And if we're going to sit there and argue with them, we're not going to win, right?
You said something at the beginning. I wanted to bring it up if you don't mind, a second. But
Yep.
I think one of the things that we talk about with loans, there are so many buyers that come to us and just ask questions. And, our jobs are to know loan products, be dangerous with them, but we're not loan officers, just like loan officers shouldn't be writing real estate contracts. That's where they're the professionals. Get them over to the loan officer. Let's explore their options. Even if they don't get qualified, let's find out. We need to get out of our own way sometimes. We need to, hey, we're not the system experts on the loan. Get over to the loan officer. Let's find out what your situation is, what your options are. And if you can't buy today, what can we do to, make sure that you can buy in 6 months, a year, whatever. That's where our biggest advantage to our, especially our first time home buyers, we don't know their whole situation. It doesn't matter what they tell us. The lender will figure that out and tell us what we need to do to get them into a home.
So Jason, you reminded me of back in the day when I was that loan officer. And not everybody could buy a house today, but if you referred a client to me, I would call you back and say, "Hey, Jason, I got some great news. What? In 6 months, Mary and Andrew will be able to buy." Instead of saying, most loan officers call back and say, "Hey, they don't qualify. I'm sorry." And then we throw them in the trash.
Mhm.
But like, there's really nobody that, if they're a candidate to be able to repay a loan, that probably within 6 to 12 months that you could structure it so they can buy a house.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if Tony Johnson's on the phone, but or Frank Del Pesce, but we did a first time home buyer. Tony sent me a picture of them at the closing, and this couple, they had 3 car loans. Tony did it at his church, by the way, a first time buyer event. People had no idea why they were coming. Tony's just like a very big um, person in the community and said, "Hey, I'm hosting an event. Come Thursday night at 6." They came. There was only 7 of them. I think 3 of them have already bought properties, and these were people in an economic category where they weren't predisposed to buying houses. And I think all 3 of them were the first person in their lineage that ever bought a house because it wasn't the way they thought, right? They were just in the rental process. That was just, never even thought about buying a house. And I think it probably took 4 to 6 months. One of the couples that was most memorable for me, they had 3 car payments of over $4,000 a month for the 3 car payments together. And they were making, 80,000 or more each, working 2 or 3 jobs. And, Tony and Frank educated them on what it would take to become a homeowner. And they followed it to a T. And within 6 months, they had moved into their new home. Now, to me, that's impactful, right? I mean, they went from depreciable assets, buying cars and working their butt off to now becoming homeownership and building equity. Okay. And that wasn't, a lot of people could have had that conversation, but Tony said, "Hey, I just want you to come because I care. And if you don't buy, that's fine, but I just want you to know what's possible." Right? Everybody should be given the ability to know what's possible.
Talking to micro celebrities.
Yeah, I'm glad that Jason brought up that point, and that's kind of where you started out today is, people don't know that they can buy a house. And that's part of my conversation with them is just, hey, there are baby steps. And baby step one is we have to get you in front of that lender so we know where your starting point is. You can't go somewhere if you don't know where you're starting from. And then, it's once they have that information, then they know, oh gosh, we actually can buy a house because they've talked to a lender. Now they know what the qualifications. If they're not ready, if they're 2 months out, 4 months out, 6 months out, 9 months out, at least they now have a game plan. They have a starting point. The lender's going to put them on a game plan and say, hey, we need to fix this, this, and this. And hey, 3 months you're ready, 6 months you're ready. So yeah, we got to take that very first step with the new home buyers because so many of them, like the veterans, they had no clue they'd even qualify for a loan. And until you talk to a lender, you just don't know. So that's the awesome baby step one. Dave, if you're a Dave Ramsey person, there's baby steps, right? Hey, baby step one is we got to get you in front of the lender.
I agree.
All right. So Brian, I'm going to wrap this up with making an example out of you. How's that?
Great.
I'm glad I'm off the hook.
It's going to be a good.
Make Jason the example.
No, Brian. You are the example. Brian, how long have you been selling real estate?
24 years.
24 years. So the people that bought earlier on in your career, okay, they probably had kids and they bought a house to raise their family. I'll bet you if you look into your database, there are a lot of those kids that are living in the house with mom and dad, feeling like they're victims and they can't afford to buy a house. And I bet you the parents are like, "Okay, when are they moving out?" Brian, do you think some of those exist?
100% I do, yeah.
So, so,
And
so,
I have been blessed to help several of, helping the parents, and I've also helped those kids out in several instances already.
right. So I'm gonna challenge you and everybody else who's been in the business 20 plus years to connect with those people that aren't selling houses but may have adult children, and not go like, not call them up like, "Hey, I have commission breath. I need to make a sale this month." But you know what, Brian? I know your kids, they finished college. You must be so proud of them. Part of the education process, I want to make sure that they know when it comes time for them to buy a house, I want to empower them to have that knowledge. And that might be the trigger, right? And if you have 10 of those conversations and they all have two kids, you'll probably be a very busy man. And you're fulfilling your moral obligation as the person that they would name as their agent. How's
Yeah,
that?
and thank you for bringing that up, Rob, because there's opportunities everywhere. And sometimes we, again, I'm gonna use that phrase, that Pam brought up, we get stuck in the mud. But man, that's just man, all this stuff is going through my head right now, man. How many people have I sold houses to 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago that have kids that are probably ready? I got a big list to make, honestly.
Yeah, and Brian, this is hard to, again, hard to digest, but if you call them up from, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure that, when your kids are ready, that I give them the information, and I find that learning about this early on gives them the empowerment to have more control over the process." Right? That's all good. It's not commission breath. It's not like, "Hey, I'm looking to sell your kid a house." No. Look, I'm very busy, but I care about you and I want to make sure that your kids have an education, a financial education, at least as it pertains to home ownership for their future, right? So there's stop spending money on Zillow until you've exhausted all the people that know and trust you and that would say that you're their professional, you're their North Star in real estate, and do it. And if the kids are in college, if the kids are in high school, maybe talk to them about a kiddie condo, okay? And if they go to college at Miami University, refer it to one of our friends. If it's anywhere else, do the right thing and refer that business out, right? Pre-screen it. I was talking to Brenda yesterday. She is one of the most thorough, like she'll give you a quiz and make sure that you're worthy of referring one of her clients to. She doesn't just look up and see how much business you did, and when I was talking to her, I'm like, wow, you really do go next level to make sure that your clients are taken care of. And not even just because they're in Remax, because there are some people in Remax that don't share the same commitment to their clients as we do. So Brian, hopefully you feel like you've been made a good example of, and you'll have some positive conversations to have that weren't on your radar this week.
Absolutely, I do, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate. And every week, every Friday, I'm learning something new. Thank you.
All right. Well, everybody have a incredible weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.